Thank you so much for joining us today, our very first webinar for Climate Bridge Korea Network. It is early in the morning here in the US and late at night in Korea. We really appreciate everybody joining at this odd hour. So nice to see you all. My name is Sujin Chong. I'm the CEO of Witness Creative Partners and the founder of Climate Bridge Korea New York. Climate Bridge Korea New York started to see Korean climate startups flourish in the global stage to make sure all of the wonderful initiatives and technologies are warranted well-deserved opportunity. We hope and plan to be a community where we can ask for help and support anytime, as we say, partnership, mentorship, entrepreneurship, and most importantly, friendship. We want to freely share the resources to be a stepping stone in every possible way. This community would not have been possible without the support of Climate Expert Network at Columbia Tech Ventures. Today, as our very first speaker for our very first webinar, we have Tim Hoffman, Climate Initiative Program Director at Columbia Technology Ventures. Before introducing Tim, just a few housekeeping items. Please save your questions until the end of Tim's presentation. For your questions, you can either type your questions in the chat box or simply raise your hand to speak. And special thanks to our team members, Grace and Susie, who have made everything so nice and beautiful. Now, Tim had 22 years of experience as an investment banker before joining Columbia Tech Ventures, and he has been serving on clean energy and clean tech board and advisory boards, including NECC and Clean Tech Open. Basically, everyone in climate tech scene in New York knows Tim, and it is such a privilege to have Tim with us today. Without further ado, Tim Hoffman.
Thank you, Sujin, for that warm welcome. And with that, I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to get started. Hopefully you can see. Let me know, Sujin, when everybody can see the presentation.
There we go.
Great. So as Sujin mentioned, Tim Hoffman, Program Director for Climate Initiatives here at Columbia Technology Ventures. Spent 22 years as an investment banker before joining Columbia, and spent some time on some nonprofit boards. I'm still on the Northeast Clean Energy Council Institute board, which provides support to early stage and mid stage climate tech startups throughout the Northeast. I have a lot of experience in raising capital and doing some deals, and I'm pleased to be here today. So getting started, I'd like to just, for those who aren't familiar with Columbia University, Columbia University is one of the top universities in the United States. Climate is very important to Columbia University. And it's so important, in fact, that we have one of the first universities to establish a climate school, where we brought together various institutions here at Columbia under one roof to support all aspects of climate, from climate research through climate innovation, policy and business. We also here at Columbia run a program called the Carbon Tech Development Initiative, funded by NYSERDA. For those who are not familiar with NYSERDA, NYSERDA is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. It is unique in that it takes money from the ratepayers of New York. While it is a state agency, it is not funded by the taxpayers. It is instead funded by the ratepayers of New York. And they use that money for the research, development, and deployment of new energy and climate technologies in New York State. They fund here at Columbia a Carbon Tech Development Initiative, which seeks to provide funding to researchers and companies that are commercializing carbon sequestration and utilization technologies. There are grants available through this program to researchers at Columbia and researchers elsewhere active in New York State. And they're developing a new commercialization program. I work in the technology transfer office called Columbia Technology Ventures. It is one of the top technology transfer offices in the United States, and unique in that while the main function of the office is to license technology developed here at Columbia to commercial entities, about half of them are startups, and so the office does things that includes Columbia's technologies, but goes well beyond Columbia technologies, funded by government entities like NYSERDA and corporations. The two groups within this office are Lab to Market that you should know about, and climate initiatives. We have a proud tradition here at Columbia University of developing deep technologies and spinning them out as startups. You'll see some names here, some older names that have started to get traction in the market like Kelvin, and so some newer names that are starting to develop a market presence like Werewolf and Sella. The Lab to Market here at Columbia Technology Ventures provides accelerator services to Columbia accelerators and others. They largely run accelerators that are in other sectors like life sciences, cybersecurity, media and information technology, and advanced materials and the like. We work kind of side by side with this group, but I'm part of a special climate initiatives group, that runs 3 programs currently. The Climate Tech Expertise Network, which I'm going to take a deeper dive on in a few minutes, which is funded by NYSERDA, which I described. The Verizon Entrepreneur Support Programs, we, over the past few years, have helped various Verizon-supported startups in the climate resilience and adaptation space. So startups that are looking to help communities deal with the effects of climate change, so flooding, fires, and the like. While some of these solutions include climate mitigation or reducing greenhouse gas emissions by their implementation, their primary focus goes outside of what NYSERDA is currently looking to support and helping communities. So we receive some grant funding from Verizon to support those companies. And finally, our little group supports the NYSERDA Climate Justice Fellows. NYSERDA's workforce development side looks to help people from priority populations or disadvantaged communities start or transition their career into climate tech in New York State. And they financially support these individuals for a period of 1 year, where they work with a host organization to further climate tech in New York State. Where we come in is we provide support to these individuals during their 1-year fellowship. And that support includes mentoring, peer group facilitation, skills labs, and an educational series, which is half led by climate school faculty here at Columbia University, as well as half led by our business experts, which you'll learn a little bit more about under the Climate Tech Expertise Network in a minute or two here. And when they complete that series, they get a certificate from Columbia's climate school that they can use to help their career development. So couldn't do this alone. In fact, I have an outstanding team, Caitlin, Emma, and Lori. If you interact with us in the future, I hope you will, you will get to know them very well. So now without further delay, the Climate Tech Expertise Network. Again, currently this program is solely supported by NYSERDA, but we will be seeking additional funding to increase the scale and scope of what this program does. But currently it is largely focused on what NYSERDA is interested in, and that is New York State. So we work collaboratively with a lot of programs that you're going to get to know a little bit today. that are, some of them are funded by NYSERDA and others are funded by others, but they're located throughout New York State and are focused on helping climate tech and related startups through incubator and accelerator programs. We also have a number of international partners because part of our mandate is to interest companies from around the world, startups from around the world, to come to New York State to deploy their solutions. So to access our program, you don't need to have an office here. However, those who don't have less access to the program, and I'll go over that in a minute. But we have helped over the last 4 or 5 years a lot of startups from other countries find opportunities in New York and justify opening offices and expanding their business. In effect, making New York kind of their soft landing place in the United States to access the U.S. market. So over the past, this Climate Tech Expertise Network is a successor program to another program, similar program, exactly the same program, although we're doing some new things with this Climate Tech Expertise Network. But over the past 5 years, we ran a program called the NYSERDA EIR program, during which time we helped over 500 climate tech startups. We helped to match 24 executives with startups to help them further their business development. And the startups accessing our program raised over $1.5 billion in non-dilutive funding and private capital. Actually, that number is closer to 1.8, but definitely over 1.5. And seven startups have exited. In other words, they sold to a larger entity. And one of them was actually a merger, which I'll talk about in the next slide. Of the 500, about 10% of them were international companies looking to find opportunities in New York State. Over 10 of them, opened an office here. More than 15 of them did pilots and demos in part with our help. And more than 10 of those 50 have achieved initial sales in New York State. And while we can't announce the name, the one Canadian startup merged with a New York startup. So, we have a track record over the past 5 years and of connecting international startups to opportunities in New York State. So how do we do this? We have over 100 of really top quality, we call entrepreneurs in residence, who mentor the startups on a project basis. Sujin is one of our outstanding EIRs, and we have others. I saw Craig Dunham on the call. He's also another one of our outstanding EIRs. We have really top quality folks who help the startups from the company formation stage to the point at which they're scaling their business, overcome challenges along the way. So all of them are accomplished in their field and bring a broad range of sector and functional expertise. Everything from grant writing and customer discovery at the earlier stages to finance, sales, marketing, human resources, manufacturing, supply chain management, software engineering, among other things at later stages. And many have deep experience in various sectors within climate tech, energy storage, solar, building energy efficiency, to bring to those mentoring discussions. We believe they're world-class, and it's not just us who believes that. We ask the startups that we work with, how satisfied are they with their EIR, and how well do they think their EIR understands their needs? And over a 5-year period and thousands of responses from the startups, the average is 4.8 out of 5 in both categories. A little bit more with understanding the needs, but it's very strong. connections with our folks and have tremendous impact for the startups that they work with. So mentoring projects, what does that look like? For international companies that don't have an office here, it looks like helping find business opportunities, understanding the New York market, finding potential pilots and demos, finding initial customers, finding an office space, finding opportunities here to justify expansion into New York and the United States. For other startups that are in New York State and have a full-time equivalent person here, include finding grant writing, grant opportunities and pursuing them. It can be building their sales force. It can be building their management team. A whole host of projects. Typically, we assign 24 hours initially of an expert or an EIR's time to a startup over a 3 to 4 month period, and adjust based on the progress it's made and the time that's needed of the startup. In short, the more progress you make and the harder, the more you demonstrate the worthiness of the services, the more services you get. And so, some of the startups that have accessed this program have accessed it over a 5-year period continuously and end up with more than one EIR during that period, depending as they experience different challenges, they get different EIRs to help with those challenges. We also offer pitch coaches to startups that are preparing for competitions or investor meetings. Our pitch coaches are a subset of these 100 plus professionals that are currently in our roster, and they, mimic the conditions of a particular upcoming opportunity. And so if you're preparing for investor meetings, they play the role of investors. Some of them are actually investors, so they're not role playing as much as they are giving you a low risk an opportunity to get feedback. Some of them, if you're preparing for a competition, they'll mimic the conditions of the competition and pretend to be a judge, but give you real actionable feedback to help improve your pitch. Can't emphasize this enough. Practicing your pitch and getting feedback is critical to telling your story effectively to make the most of your capital raising and competition efforts. We offer workshops and skills labs, often led by our experts, and we have a series coming up. All of you are invited to join that series on AI and cybersecurity. This will be led by NVIDIA, and so they will bring in some experts on AI and cybersecurity. Often, however, these workshops and skills labs, they're all virtual, by the way. They are on topics that we agree with our ecosystem partners, startups in the climate tech space would benefit from. So in addition to attending the upcoming Korean Climate Bridge webinars, you might want to consider joining some of these workshops and skills labs. They are free and available to any climate tech startup globally. We also offer peer groups, and you don't have to be in New York for this too. We have international peer groups. These are groups of company founders and business professionals from startups who want to meet with each other on a monthly basis, guided by one of our EIRs. So the group size is usually 6 to 8 startup team members, and they meet on a monthly basis. Occasionally, the group will have a common need, like grant writing or fundraising or human resource issues. And so we can bring in our specialist experts to monthly meetings or group meetings to help the discussion. And currently we have 6 groups and are looking to grow this part of the program. So another part of what we do is help startups build their management team. What that looks like for international companies is building that U.S. subsidiary management team. So why do we do this? I know this from experience, but also a number of years ago, there was um, a survey done of venture capitalists in the United States. Over 800 of them were surveyed by the National Bureau of Economic Research in collaboration with some top universities here in the United States. They surveyed and they asked them a number of questions about how they make investment decisions. And one of those questions was, what is the most important single factor that you consider in making an investment decision? And of the respondents, 47% of them said the management team. I wasn't surprised to see that management team is number one, but I was a little surprised to see that when you add up everything else of those investors who responded to, the technology, the business model, the industry, the sector, and so forth, it added up to 37%. So it just highlights how important it is to have the right management team when you're going to talk to investors. And if you don't, then you have a plan to get there. A lot of startups don't, and so we help them build their management teams. We start by helping them identify their skill gaps. I mean, you have skills, your colleagues on your management team have skills, but the startup needs a lot of things in the next 18 to 24 months that you may not, have on your team currently. And what those missing elements or skills are called skill gaps. Or we call them skill gaps anyway. So we help you define roles around those skill gaps by doing individual skill assessments and personality assessments. And this helps you get an understanding of the existing makeup of your team and how it aligns with your goals or doesn't align with your goals. And as you identify the missing elements, we can help you find folks who can fill those gaps and from a skill perspective and have the right personality to fit the role and complement your team and help you better align with your goals. When there's a potential fit, then we can fund a trial project through this program. And what that is a consulting-like project where we will pay the candidate to do a consulting project with the startup for a period of 3 or 4 months to help you de-risk the relationship before you have to make a decision about hiring the person. It's a risky, joining a startup is risky for the candidate. It's also risky for you in making a hiring decision. And so we're looking to de-risk that through this process that we have with the Climate Tech Expertise Network. We also run a climate leadership Slack network. This is available to all of you today if you're interested. It is New York State focused, so we have over 1,000 users. All of them are active in New York State or aspiring to be in New York State. The vast majority of them are startups, startup founders or management team members or key players in their startup. And what is this for? It's to help make connections, to post jobs, to get some advice from other EIRs and professionals, learn about events, find out about opportunities for grants and other programs here in New York State. Encourage you to participate in this, and there's no charge. Coming soon for those who are in New York State, we will be helping those that have an office here to connect with investors and corporations on a quarterly basis. In the past, under the old program, we did that on an annual basis. Going forward, we'll be doing it on a quarterly basis for those who are most ready for the discussion. Eligibility, as I mentioned earlier, this is open to any climate tech startup that might have helped New York State achieve its climate goals. It does not include startups that might have an incremental benefit to a fossil fuel like natural gas. However, if the application can address a non-fossil world, but is addressing improvements to fossil fuels currently, then it could still qualify. If you're in a NYSERDA funded accelerator, which I'll come to some of those in a few minutes here, you have full access to all services. However, for those companies, talent matching is limited to New York hires for out-of-state companies. So in the international context, what it means is, for you folks, it means that if you're looking to help build your management team, we can do so in New York, but we can't do so in other states like California. If you have an office in New York, you are eligible for all services. For more information about the program, please visit climatestartupsupport.com, climatestartupsupport.com, and you can apply to the program through the website. Also, later I'll add some links for the application and for the Climate Leadership Network, if you're interested. You can apply directly, but climatestartupsupport.com. With that, I'm going to pause because I have more content to talk about resources throughout the United States and in other states. But I'm going to stop here to see if there are any questions. Sujina, are there any questions from the audience, or perhaps if somebody wants to raise their hand and ask a question, I'm happy to take it at this time, break this up a little bit, and answer any questions folks might have about what I've covered so far.
We don't have any questions in the chat box, but feel free to raise your hands. 한국말로 하실 거면 제가 또 통역해 드릴 수 있으니까 편하게 얘기하세요. 네. Okay, David.
Hi, welcome everyone. Tim, great presentation. Sujin, thanks for putting this together. I've been a mentor in the program for a number of years. I've worked with many different companies. It's been terrific. All different types of climate-related clean tech projects. I'm currently working, I'm one of the peer group moderators that Tim talked about. I'm working with carbon capture and storage companies. There are 4 CEOs from all over the United States. Tim, thanks very much. Thanks, Sujin, again.
Thanks for being here, David.
Thank you,
Thanks for all you
David.
do.
Thank you.
That's fine. If there aren't any questions, we will. Oh, I see Brian's got a question.
Okay.
Morning, everyone, or good evening, everyone, or both. Just a really quick clarification. It looked like in one of the slides, to be eligible for some of the support of a venture, a startup needs to have an office in New York, but that would include having an incubator seat. Just want to make sure that I understood that properly. And then I had a quick question about the list. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, they need to have an office in New York, and if it's an international company, it's helpful to have a U.S. subsidiary. And if you're going to, although not all of them, you don't need to have a U.S. subsidiary to access the program. It's helpful to have a U.S. subsidiary, I guess, to get funding from government agencies, which we can cover in a little bit. But yes, to have full access to the program, you need to have an office in New York.
Well, you're welcome to participate in the mentoring program.
Yeah,
so
you can.
You don't have an office in the US.
Yeah, until you have an office in New York, you can access the mentoring to help find business opportunities in New York. You just can't raise money from venture capitalists, or build your sales force in Korea, or do other general corporate things until you have an office here.
And for anyone who's curious why I might be asking, who's who's watching from Korea, I'm from the US, as you might have guessed, but I'm also not in New York, so some of these same situations apply to some of us as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's based on our current funding, which is solely from NYSERDA. As I believe I mentioned, we will be seeking additional funding from other agencies and corporations. I can't speak to conversations we're having, or where they might go, but those, depending on the outcome, that may enable us to expand definitions beyond New York and beyond the current definition of climate tech that NYSERDA has for us. But yeah.
Tim?
Yes, David.
Or Sujin? I'm curious with the people that are on from Korea, and welcome. I know it's good evening, as Brian said. Curious, like what type of climate or clean tech companies they might be involved with, or what their interests are, if anyone would be willing to put it in the chat, the meeting chat, the group chat.
Thank you, David. 저희 지금 혹시 스타트업 대표님들 계시면 어떤 클라이밋 테크놀로지 있으신지 좀 알려주실 수 있을까요? 거기 챗박스에 써주시면 좋을 것 같아요.
Okay. Well,
okay.
folks can put the additional questions they might have as we continue in the chat, as well as mention their technology if they're interested in the chat as well as I continue. So while we at the Climate Tech Expertise Network work with all of the NYSERDA funded incubators and accelerator programs and many others throughout New York State, I thought it'd be useful for you to get a better understanding of what those organizations look like and do. Some of them may be interesting to you as places to consider applying to as you consider the U.S. market. So throughout New York State, there are quite a few incubators that are that touch climate tech. Some of them are more focused on climate tech than others. I kind of start with the northwest part of the state, in Buffalo, where Launch New York Eco is located. Launch New York not only has an incubator, that has a focus on climate tech, they also have an investment fund and angel group that invests in startups that are active in the northern western part of New York State. NextCore is an organization that runs some accelerator programs that I'll cover in a minute. They are also located they're located in Rochester, which is in the northern western part of state, about a little more than an hour east of Buffalo. Also, RIT, is a Rochester Institute of Technology, has an incubator called Venture Creations that has had a number of clean tech and climate tech startups over the years. Rochester RIT, is more or less an engineering school, and as a result has a lot of technologies that are in this space. Moving a little further east, we have in Syracuse the Tech Garden, Syracuse Tech Garden, which houses a number of clean tech startups, climate tech startups. Syracuse also has a Center of Excellence, which we'll talk about in a minute, and runs a program called EPIC for the DOE that is focused on building energy efficiency. So when you think of New York State and opportunities, Syracuse is an area that if you're looking to test out your building energy efficiency technologies is a place that you might want to consider. Incubator Works is further to the south, and in the Alfred University area. Alfred is well known for ceramics, and they have Incubator Works has a number of incubators. One of them focused on more local workforce development, but they've had a number of clean tech startups over the years. Kaufman Southern Tier Incubator, moving a little east from from Alfred, is located in Binghamton, New York, one of the state schools, SUNY Binghamton. They are increasingly supporting startups in the energy storage space. Have an excellent $10 million facility there that has some wet lab space and some prototyping space in downtown Binghamton. Maybe not. So then Rev Ithaca Startups is a little bit to the north in Ithaca, for those who are familiar with Cornell, another Ivy League school in the United States. Rev Ithaca Startup Works is in downtown Ithaca, which is where Cornell is located. And they have supported a number of hardware-related startups and other startups in the climate tech space. Clarkson is east of Syracuse and north. They have some testing facilities around wind and have had a number of climate tech related startups in wind and building energy efficiency and water. SUNY RF is the research foundation for the State University of New York's schools, located in Albany, which is the capital of New York State. And they support a number of startups throughout the school system, which has universities spread throughout the New York State, from Buffalo to Long Island. And they support all of those early stage startups, kind of even before they have formed a legal entity. One of the stronger incubators in New York State is in New York City, in Brooklyn. It is the Urban Future Lab, run out of NYU, another outstanding university in New York State. And the Urban Future Lab is probably one of the premier locations for climate tech startups in the state. On Long Island at SUNY Binghamton, there's a high-tech incubator formerly known as CBIP. They not only do help startups in the clean tech and climate tech space, but other sectors as well, now under the name of Long Island High-Tech Incubator. Here in the Hudson Valley, we have Hudson Valley Venture Hub at SUNY New Paltz, a little north of where I live here in Westchester County in New York. And in the Albany area, we have the Tech Center, or Tech Valley Center of Gravity. It is a incubator, a co-working space, and a place for you to prototype various technologies. There are also some, for very early stage startups, there are some programs that you should be aware of in New York State, and some of them are more expansive than New York State. I'll start with Activate, probably because it's the earliest. Activate operates a fellows program where they will support researchers who have entrepreneurial aptitude in kind of early stage commercialization. They will pay those researchers to work for 2 years under 2-year fellowship and form their company, prepare for capital raises, the whole 9 yards. They got their start in Berkeley, California, under Berkeley Labs, and under the name of Cyclotron Road, which is where that is located. And due to the success of the Cyclotron Road effort, they startups raised over $1 billion. And these are really early stage startups. Many of them are in the energy space and climate tech space, but not all of them. That led to their expansion to Boston and now New York, where New York Activate is funded by NYSERDA. a name that you're going to become very familiar with in New York State. And they're focused here in New York State on climate tech related startups. So they help those researchers in New York State who are in the climate tech space form their companies and get ready for raising money. We support a number of the startups that have gotten to the point of forming a company, and we're helping a number of them now. Venture for Climate Tech is an annual accelerator funded by NYSERDA again, and led by NextCore, one of the groups on the previous page, and another group that's not on the previous page called Second Muse in Brooklyn. So it's a collaborative effort of the folks in Rochester and Brooklyn, so upstate and downstate New York. And Venture for Climate Tech works with really early startups that have recently formed their company, and helps them accelerate their business during the June through October timeframe, and then at the end connects them with investors. Along the way, there is non-dilutive funding available to startups in their program based on the achievement of milestones, and I believe it's north of $100,000 available to each startup. The EPICS Buildings program, I mentioned, associated with the Tech Garden, is funded by the Department of Energy and focused on helping startups in the early stages with their early commercialization efforts around the built environment. And then last but not least, in the Northeast at the early stage is the Clean Tech Open. Clean Tech Open is a nonprofit accelerator active across the United States. As mentioned in my introduction, I've been associated with this organization for a period of time. I was on the national board. Currently, I'm the volunteer leader for the New York Clean Tech Open. What the Clean Tech Open does on an annual basis is help startups from the Northeast, although we do have some international startups that are part of the Clean Tech Open, go through an accelerator program guided by volunteer mentors from around the Northeast. I believe Sujin and David are also mentors in that program. And so the startups get assigned to 4 mentors and accelerate their business plan over the course of the summer. It results in a competition on a regional basis, and then a competition on a national basis. But the most important element of this is the mentoring and the improvement in readiness for market that startups accessing this program get. And I mentioned it while we have a New York presence with that organization. It is broader and regionally and nationally. More advanced accelerators in New York State. Probably the most advanced of them is the Clean Fight. These are for companies that have revenue, and they run thematic accelerators. So those based on a theme. They in the past have done 2 accelerators for the built environment in New York City. They've done 1 on energy storage, and currently they're doing 1 on food service and cold chain. They connect startups to corporations that are interested in those areas. They provide some funding, and it's for startups that have more than $1 million in revenue. Often these startups have even more than $5 or $10 million in revenue that participate in the Clean Tech. So it's the latest stage of all of the incubators or accelerators rather that are funded in New York State. Uptake is a new accelerator. It is focused, kind of is positioning itself in the readiness for pilots and demos. So it's kind of a mid-stage accelerator for those startups that are looking to prove their technology in the field. It provides acceleration services to those startups. It has completed its first cohort and taking applications, I believe, for its second cohort. Scale for Climate Tech is another collaboration between the Next Core folks in Rochester and the Second Muse folks in Brooklyn. It is focused on manufacturing readiness. So those startups that access this program work with outstanding EIRs like Craig, who I saw earlier on this call, and to help that improve their manufacturing readiness levels. So it is all around manufacturing and has programming and support services to help startups improve their manufacturing scalability. Hacks and IndieBio are both funded by a venture capital firm called SOSV and come with some investment as part of participation in their accelerator. Hacks is located over in New Jersey and Newark, New Jersey, but a lot of the startups that we work with have offices here, but also an office there. And it has space where you can try prototype and some manufacturing resources. So it's largely around startups that are pursuing manufacturing. IndieBio has an office in New York City and is focused on those kind of bioengineering startups that are pursuing solutions that involve biochemical processes. They have a wet lab here in New York City that startups can access. While they're not dedicated to climate tech, there are a number of our climate tech startups that are accessing those labs in New York City. Some other New York State sector specific accelerators that you might be interested in. Carbon Tech or Carbon to Value Initiative is a collaboration between the Urban Future Lab in Brooklyn and Greentown Labs in Boston. That accelerator looks to help startups in the carbon capture and utilization space. And they have undergone 3 cohorts and their startups have achieved tremendous success. They tend to be a little later stage than the Carbon Tech Development Initiative. So think of the Carbon Tech Development Initiative that I mentioned earlier, Columbia, as a feeder to this accelerator. They take startups from around the United States and around the world and have industry partners who are interested in helping those startups scale their business. The Offshore Wind Innovation Hub is funded by Equinor out of Norway and focuses on helping startups that in the offshore wind space and is run by the Urban Future Lab out of Brooklyn. And finally, ChargeUp is a new accelerator funded by the NSF through its New Energy New York program, and it's focused on battery energy storage, located up in the northern western part of the state. Is collaboration with Hoffman, Southern Tier Incubator. Some other sector-specific accelerators which have prize money around the state do have from time to time startups that we might consider climate tech or have climate tech solutions associated with them, but not necessarily. Luminate focuses on the optics solutions and is run out of Rochester. It has $1 million annual prize associated with it, but it's focused on optics solutions. Grow New York, done in collaboration with Cornell Tech, and is focused on ag tech in New York State. Some of ag tech solutions touch climate tech, but not all. And Genius New York is run out of the Tech Garden in Syracuse, and is around unmanned aerial vehicles. So upstate in the Syracuse area, there's not far, there's an Air Force base where you can test a lot of drones and drone solutions, and a lot of an ecosystem around manufacturing components and for drones. So any drone types of solution is Genius New York. these programs have $1 million prizes, $500,000 runner-up prizes, so significant non-dilutive funding opportunities funded by New York State. Some other organizations and programs you should be aware of. Syracuse has a center of excellence where they test out building energy efficiency technologies at a facility near the Syracuse University. RIT has a center of excellence around advanced manufacturing, roll-to-roll manufacturing, among others. And then Cornell has a center of excellence around food and agriculture, and they're part of that Grow New York. And then a new emerging set of resources in New York City. One's fairly established in New Lab. Is now becoming known as the Harbor Climate Collaborative, funded by the New York City Economic Development Corporation. The New Lab has been established for a number of years now and is an outstanding place to have your initial office in New York State. And it offers co-working space with a lot of startups from a lot of different industries, many of them in climate tech. But it offers 3D printing and manufacturing, initial prototype and batch manufacturing capabilities there. It is housed on the Navy Yard there in Brooklyn. Coming soon are governors a new New York State climate exchange with education and support services to climate tech startups, and an innovation hub the Brooklyn Army Terminal. Somehow that Army Terminal got cut off. They just closed applications for people to run that. So all of these three resources for climate tech startups in New York City area are all reachable by ferry, by a boat. So you can basically go from Manhattan to each one of these locations via the New York City ferry system. And they're looking to establish an ecosystem around climate tech in the years to come. Some other programs you should be aware of in New York State. New Energy New York just got $160 million from the NSF to establish a energy storage and hydrogen ecosystem in in the northern and western part of New York State. Fuse Hubs runs a number of competitions and connects startups to manufacturing and other resources throughout New York State. New York's best is a battery and energy storage association with a global membership. It's the who's who of battery energy storage. So from startups all the way to multinational corporations, a lot of whom you'd recognize if you saw the list. Their focus is on, and they collaborate with New Energy New York. Their focus is on furthering battery energy storage, manufacturing, testing, and early commercialization in New York State. And then finally, New York Empire State Development funds a lot of initiatives that are more expansive than NYSERDA across the state. They fund those competitions that I mentioned, Mi국ne의, Grow New York, and Genius New York. And they have a venture fund to invest in New York State opportunities, not just in climate tech, but in other sectors as well. But they are a source of funding. One of the Canadian companies we worked with was able to get some funding from them to facilitate the opening of an office in Rochester through connections made by their EIR and art program, which was, I think, $2.6 million. So the New York State offers a lot. Some international programs that we have worked with in the past. You may not be interested in any of these other than the Climate Bridge, Korean Climate Bridge, but there are additional soft landing resources at Weave and Soft Landing New York, which is run out of SUNY Binghamton. But we've worked with a number of organizations all of the organizations on this page, helping our startups find business opportunities in New York State. Some federal government resources. Now, if you're an international startup, many of these require you to have a U.S. subsidiary, and even so, partner with a U.S. entity. But just so you're aware, the federal government funds a lot of initiatives in climate tech. Many of the startups we serve receive funding from these organizations, these departments of the federal government. And in fact, every federal government agency is required currently to have an SBIR, which is an early commercialization grant for a percentage of its budget to go to startups. Not all of them are interested in climate tech. All of them on this page have a strong interest in climate tech, and startups from our program have received funds from them. There are many other federal agencies who, from time to time, have an interest in the startups we serve. There are also federal labs throughout the United States that provide research and development services for a fee. I can't speak to the eligibility requirements of all of them. I can say that some of the Canadian companies have been able to, that are part of the CTA Climate Tech Initiative, have been able to work with NREL researchers. Some state agencies, I mentioned NYSERDA, so you should be familiar with them. And again, it's the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, about $1.6 billion per year budget. The bulk of that goes to deployment, but they fund the program, a lot of the programs that I've mentioned in New York on the previous slides. Massachusetts Clean Energy Center is a much smaller version of NYSERDA, but very high quality and out of the Boston area. They, while it says clean energy in their name, they've also been more expansive into climate tech like NYSERDA. And then the California Energy Commission has over $1 billion a year budget and supports energy innovation in California. These are every state agency in the United States, or not every, but the vast majority of states now have some kind of funds available for climate tech. Often they're defined for their state. I mentioned these three because they are the largest and most active and have been responsible for decades in establishing ecosystems in those three states, which are probably the three strongest regions for climate tech in the United States. It's not to say that other parts of the United States don't have interesting programs for niche categories, but broadly speaking, these are the three strongest institutions in the United States on a state basis. Other programs and organizations throughout the country that you might be interested in knowing about: Activate, I talked about. Breakthrough Energy has a fellows program for startup founders and also business folk. Breakthrough, is, for those who aren't familiar, also has a venture capital arm, over $1 billion dedicated to climate tech, funded by Bill Gates and some other wealthy individuals. Techstars is an accelerator program, not just focused on climate tech, but has had a number of climate tech companies. They have some areas which, like in, I think, Alabama, where they tend to be more clean energy focused. But it is one of the premier places for startups to accelerate their business. They are very selective and take investment as part of their support of startups. Shell Game Changer collaborates with NREL and has prize money and non-dilutive funding associated with. You should be familiar with the Incubate Energy Network. Many of the companies and many of the organizations that I'll discuss in a few minutes are part of that network of incubators throughout the United States, and there are an increasing number of them. So if New York is not your place, there are other places, niche areas. Maybe Definitely not with the breadth and depth of resources in New York State, but there are other parts of the country that, depending on what you're doing, could be, an area you might want to consider. Clean Tech Open, I've talked about, national organization, nonprofit. It's accelerated several thousand companies over the last 16 years, more than that now, I guess. It's going on 20 years. I've been involved in that organization for a long time and seen the impact on startups. Third Derivative, based in Colorado, are headquartered there, and offers acceleration services for climate tech startups. Then I mentioned the Climate Resilience Prize. I'm not sure they're going to do one this year. They've done it the last few years, Verizon. But there are other corporates in the United States who offer these kinds of prizes, and an increasing number at that. So I'm going to pause here again for any other questions you might have.
Okay, well, thank you, Tim. Now you know why I had Tim speak as a first speaker. I mean, I knew that he knew a lot, but I didn't know he knew this much. And thank you so much for sharing it all. We have a couple of questions in the chat box. First one came from Justin. I had to wear my glasses to read this. Justin's the CEO and founder of Enercamp. They specialize in electric vehicle charging solutions using battery technology, primarily focusing on the hardware. So they have software as well. And he had a question about we have an experience or expertise in hardware solution, particularly in batteries and energy, in terms of support we can give from New York State point of view. There was another question from Angela. This is for, she's wondering if all our support is for the venture scale or smaller companies, instead of, or if this includes all, companies at various scales.
So handle Justin's first. Yes, we work with a lot of hardware companies at all stages. And many hardware startups need software solutions or analytics associated with the data that's coming off of the hardware in various applications. We've had a number of startups in the EV charging space, both hardware and software solutions and combinations thereof. So we have a lot of experience in this space. We have EIRs that have a lot of experience in at major utilities and know how to work with them and negotiate with them. One of them is a speaker coming up. Justin, you might want to ask Margaret some specific questions. Margaret Jolly is one of our outstanding EIRs. Will be a speaker coming up in the series, who used to be at Con Ed, head of R&D there, as well as for pilots and demos. She understands how has worked with a lot of startups over the years, and I won't opine on what she'll tell you, because what she'll tell you is going to be more relevant and impactful than what I do. I can say that we have folks like Margaret who work with our startups to help them identify opportunities and pursue them in New York State and beyond. New York State is and the federal government have a lot of support for expanding EV charging infrastructure, and I expect that to continue. So hopefully that answers your question, Justin. And Angela, we focus on startups that are kind of at the company formation stage. They've formed a legal entity. So that stage, through the point at which they're scaling their business, so usually that means Series B. But for international startups, it's a little more flexible. If relatively early stage and entering the United States is somewhat a risk. I have a little more flexibility to go later stage with international companies than I might with U.S. companies, and that don't, international startups that may be more mature than their U.S. equivalent, but are just entering the New York market. I have a little more flexibility in terms of stage. Happy to answer any specific, drilling down a little further on that, but hopefully that helps and answers your question.
Oh, okay. And there was another question from, oh, am I mute? No, okay, no. Sorry. There was another question from Youngsu, who's in Fort Lee, New Jersey. He's wondering if there are any opportunities about carbon tech, especially in graphite-related materials in the States.
Yes,
Graphene-related materials in the States, yeah.
Yeah, yes, there are an increasing number of opportunities with graphene. I'm seeing it in, I guess, most frequently in some kind of battery energy storage solution currently, but there are many other applications for graphene, you know, to help us deal with climate issues. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm happy to follow up with more details because it's a very specific question. But yeah.
Yeah, happy to talk to anybody one-on-one. In fact, before we close, I will, when I've stopped sharing my presentation, I'll put a link to my Calendly for anybody who wants to schedule a one-on-one with me.
That's very nice. Thank you very much, Tim. Is there any questions that we can answer for you at this point? But, you know, you're welcome. You know where to find me. You can always reach out to me. And, you know, we're doing this really to see the startups get the opportunity they deserve. So we're here to support with any resources they may need. So, you know, I would like to, yeah, I would like all of you to think as a, you know, very friendly, comfortable family setting that we can ask any questions anytime you need. Because I have seen a lot of Korean companies, and I'm from Korea, I'm Korean. We oftentimes don't say because we're shy. Oftentimes we don't express our thoughts as much, and we know how much you know and how smart you are, but oftentimes we don't share it as much. And so I just want it to be a very comfortable platform that we can just ask and say anything you want and just get what you deserve. So that's the whole purpose of why I'm doing this now. And so yeah. Okay. Any other questions that we can answer at this point? And I'm getting some questions about the massive list that Tim has that is hard to digest. So I have a homework. I'm going to put this all in digestible forms and share it so you can all have a good access to it. Oh, hi, everyone. Hi.
Hi, thank you for highlighting my video. And thank you, Tim, for the presentation. Thank you, Sujin, for hosting this. I think it's a great opportunity for Korean startups. So I'm currently working at a B2B SaaS company that is not related to climate tech, but I am very interested in opportunities of transitioning to a climate career, especially in the States. So a very realistic question that I have is that in order to apply, in order to be eligible for the programs that you mentioned, would I be able to have, or would I need a working visa in the States? Because you mentioned that I would need an office space in New York, and I was wondering if the international visa issues would also apply.
Yeah, so our next speaker can best answer those types of questions related to legal matters. I will say that to work in the United States, you do need a work visa and support to work in the United States. For startup who is applying for our program, you don't necessarily, you're not working in New York State necessarily, you don't necessarily need a work visa at that point. But I think the specifics of your individual situation, are best handled by Anne, our next speaker, who has a lot of experience working with folks from various countries who are looking to establish offices in New York State and elsewhere in the United States, as well as individuals who are pursuing professional careers here. So hopefully that didn't dodge too much and answers part of your question that I'm able to, and I encourage you to join next week's session with Anne.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Okay. Any other questions you may have? Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Tim, for this sharing your vast knowledge and network of of the industry. And I think a lot of us are probably going to be bugging you for for a while for help. And oh, we have another question. Sorry. Okay. Dr. Kwanguk.
Yes,
Yeah.
hi everyone. I missed the first 10-20 minutes because of I arrived in New York City last night really late, so I woke up a little bit late. But first of all, thank you team for sharing all the detailed information. I was, as an alum of the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, I'm really sad my institution is kind of not involved all these great programs yet. Hopefully they do soon. But anyway, I'm currently in the Maryland, and I'm wondering whether you guys are sharing this presentations somewhere because I think that there's a lot of demand in Korea. Recently, I had the chance to study a couple startup companies, climate-related startup companies in Korea. What they are suffering is one, regulation is one of the big deal in the US and other countries because what I'm studying there is the company who do the renewable garbage cleaning and renewal and recycling, which is highly regulated in some way. So that I understand they are struggling to enter the different country because of the regulations. And second, and Korean market itself is really, really small. So there's a increasing interest are there, but because of the market is so small, not many startup company compared to like SaaS or other type of digital company is developed yet. That's what I feel so far. But definitely, I think that this is a good opportunity for them to know. If they know, then probably we will have the better attentions or better interest from the Korean startups. So I know that today there's around 20 something. I don't know how many of them are like startup companies, founders. But I definitely want to share this video to some of the network in Korea, those of you who are interested in participating in this program. But by the way, thank you, team. This is great.
Thank you for your comments. And, you know, when startups are ready from, countries like Korea and other countries where the market may not be as large as the United States, for the United States, our program offers an excellent way for you to explore opportunities in the United States as a place to go when you're ready. If you're just coming out of the lab in South Korea, and I'm not sure it's the best time to be entering international markets, although it could be for certain applications. But when you're ready, the United States offers a very large market, and New York State offers a great ecosystem for you to get started, and a lot of support for, New York City is kind of one of the financial capitals of the world, and has a lot of diversity and a lot of folks from around the world. So it's a great place to get started if you're an international startup in the United States, which is a very large market. Although it is, we have our own regulations, which can slow down commercialization of certain technologies in certain areas. And certain parts of the United States are more receptive to certain technologies than others. But New York's a great place to get started because it's a large market in and of itself, has robust support for early stage ventures and early commercialization and market adoption of technologies. And then, other places to go, Massachusetts, California, offer robust connections for startups as well. And then once you're here, then many New York the United States is a big market. So glad that you're here, and I appreciate your willingness to share the video and the presentation with other promising startups from South Korea. But for the presentation, you should contact Sujin and her team.
Yeah. I'll be happy to share if the team is okay with it. Yeah. And we also have some speakers coming up from a Hoffman Foundation, Bandana. She's willing to speak at early September. So we have a few of the speakers coming up from the New York State as well. So
yeah, Bandana runs that Charge Up accelerator that I mentioned on the slides.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I do have an overview of other state incubators. It's really short. I'm happy to continue with that, or continue answering questions at the next bit of time here. I think we have until 9:30, right? Or 10:30 in South Korea. Is that correct, Suji?
Okay. Shall we share whatever? I mean,
yeah. So I have a few more slides. That
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
Let's go back to where I was. So, in the broader Northeast, there are quite a few other incubators and programs that you might want to be aware of. In Maine, there's E2 Tech. In Vermont, there's a Delta Accelerator. In New Hampshire, on the New Hampshire border, there's Dartmouth with their Green Shot program. Probably one of the strongest incubators in the United States in climate tech is in Boston, or in the Boston area in Somerville, Massachusetts, called Greentown Labs. They have prototyping space, wet lab, and are well funded by corporate sponsors, global corporate sponsors. They also have an office in Houston, Texas. So Boston and Houston currently. The NECC, I sit on the board of the Institute, but they also have a policy arm and are very supportive of clean energy startup and clearing the way for opportunities of commercializing climate tech and clean energy in the Northeast. They're about to change their name, so this slide will be outdated soon, but Northeast Clean Energy Council. Mass Challenge is more for early stage Massachusetts companies. It's a competition with some prize money. The Engine is out of MIT, incubator and co-working space in Boston. See Ahead is focused on ocean and water solutions. Climate Haven is in New Haven, Connecticut, where Yale is located. They have a new incubator and growing ecosystem in the middle of Connecticut. And the New Jersey Economic Development Authority sponsors an increasing number of clean tech, climate tech programming and funding in the Northeast. In the Southeast, there are a few incubators, North Carolina, Oak Ridge in Tennessee, and some others. In the Midwest, probably the strongest of these is Evergreen Climate Innovations in the Chicago area, formerly Clean Energy Trust. Generator is Wisconsin, Minnesota. Nosphere Ventures is out of Colorado. Argonne Chain Reaction Innovations is Argonne, which is in the Chicago area. IN2 Innovation Incubator is a collaboration of NREL, funded by and Wells Fargo, a financial institution in the United States. They have funded building energy efficiency startups over the years, and they have also, I believe, started an ag tech incubator. On the West Coast, and I'm not going to be as expansive. There's a lot more than this on the West Coast, but give you a flavor, New Energy Nexus, which runs Clean Fight, has a global network of accelerators, and they're headquartered in San Francisco. Elemental Accelerator, California and Hawaii. The Los Angeles Clean Incubator, probably another one of the premier clean tech incubators in the country, located in Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles. Clean Tech Alliance in Washington, and Plug and Play is a private incubator and accelerator office in near Silicon Valley. In summary, the U.S. represents a tremendously large market for you. There are many programs and funding sources for climate tech throughout the United States, but navigating them can be difficult. And we recommend that you have a guide, and that's where Sujin and we can help you. Please visit my website at climatestartupsupport.com and continue to go to Sujin's many outstanding upcoming webinars in the coming weeks. And that would be the end of my presentation, and happy to take any other questions we have with our remaining time, and excited to get to know all of you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm just so thrilled, and thank you so much for Tim sharing your wisdom and experience and information again. And this is way better than what I expected, and thank you so much, and thank you everybody for coming. Yeah, like I said, we're here. We want to help, and we want, climate tech, we're here to survive the world. So I'm sure we can work as a team, and so we want to help each other as much as we can. So we're always here, so feel free to reach out to us. And like Tim mentioned, we have a webinar coming up with Anne Wolfson. She's a lawyer, excellent lawyer, helping the startups, especially in the climate tech space, coming to the U.S. from international companies. She has extensive experience in the field, so you can have a great time. So you can find the meeting sign up on our website and everywhere. I'm sure you're gonna get our newsletter too. So please sign up and join us next week on July 10th, Wednesday. We can't have this every week, I wish. So we're trying to have it every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So you will get definitely make sure that you sign up for a newsletter, and you'll hear from us, and then we'll go on from there. So next time, we also Tim mentioned we're gonna have a Margaret Jolie joining us. She's just a tremendous energy person, and she has worked with so many clean tech and the green energy people at Con Edison. Con Edison, the name still gives me kind of a buzz because it's the company set up by Edison, the Edison that we know. So she retired from that company, and she worked with a lot of alternative energy companies. It's going to be very helpful for everybody who is in that space. And I will have an announcement soon with a lineup of speakers, which is, I'm so grateful, and I'm just so thrilled to be a part of this. Yeah, thank you so much for everybody coming, and yeah, we look forward to seeing you soon, especially next week. Okay, thank you so much. Have a great day and have a good night.
Thank you, Tim and Sujin.
Thank you.
Thank you.